500 years ago, there were people on both sides of the Atlantic Ocean, but neither knew about the other. On the western side, our side, the people had reddish-brown skins and lived in huts or wigwams. On the eastern side, in Europe, the people were white-skinned. They had learned how to build houses and large sailing ships, but they still didn't know much about the rest of the world. In fact, most of them believed the earth was flat. Then one day, a map maker named Christopher Columbus had an idea.
Do you know what? I think the world isn't flat at all. I think it's round like a ball.
Did you hear what he said? Did you hear what he said? He said that the world is round. Oh,
He's crazy. I think the world isn't flat at all. I think it's round like a ball.
the world's as flat as the brim of your hat, and that is very plain.
I know that I'm right. Oh, I know that I'm right when I say that the world is round. Oh, I'm right. I'm right. My thinking is sound, and I'll prove the world's round. It won't take very long.
But it did take long, 7 long years, before Columbus could convince a king or a queen to let him try out his idea. Then Queen Isabella of Spain agreed to supply the ships and men for his trip.
I will discover a shortcut to India and bring back some of the great wealth I find there. And I can do it, for I know the world is round. And instead of going east to India, I shall sail west and reach India around the other way. It will be a shorter and cheaper way, for I'll do it all by sea.
Queen Isabella provided Columbus with 3 ships, the Nina, the Pinta, and the Santa Maria. And on August 3rd, 1492, they set sail across the unknown Atlantic.
High on the foaming tide, over the ocean, onward our ships will ride, onward, my sailors.
The ships sailed onward, but 2 long months after they started, there was still no sign of land ahead.
Turn back, Columbus. Turn back, Columbus.
We'll not turn back until we find India. Onward, men!
By October 10th, the sailors and the crew were ready to take matters into their own hands.
If Columbus won't do as we ask, we'll put him in chains.
And we'll turn the ships around ourselves.
Wait, have you heard? One of our men has just seen a branch in the ocean.
What of it?
It had fresh berries on it.
That means we're near land.
Hooray!
2 days later, the ships reached land, and Columbus and his crew saw the people with reddish-brown skins who lived there.
Oh, I think it is rather surprising that they should have reddish-brown skins. But now since we have landed in India, then these people must be Indians.
We'll call this part of India San Salvador, and I take possession of it in the name of the King and Queen of Spain.
The people Columbus called Indians were very friendly, and they gave Columbus and his men many gifts, but not the rich jewels and gold for which they had come. For Columbus really wasn't in India at all. He was on one of the islands off the coast of America. But because of Columbus's mistake, the natives of America have been called Indians ever since. Columbus visited other islands near San Salvador, looking for the great wealth of India. And then he and some of his men returned to Spain.
Hooray for Admiral Christopher Columbus!
Columbus had no trouble getting ships and men for his second voyage, but he still hadn't the slightest idea that he was headed for the vast continent of America, and that he would have had to cross it and sail over the Pacific Ocean before he could reach India by traveling west. The men of Europe were no longer afraid of the ocean. Columbus made 2 more voyages, and other explorers followed. But each year on October 12th, we celebrate Columbus Day, the anniversary of that day in 1492, when Columbus first sighted the land of the New World, America.
Come listen to my story and listen to it well. I'll tell you of a great man who served his country well. His name was Daniel Boone and he wore a coonskin hat. And his clothes were made of buckskin. Now what do you think of that? Dan was born in Pennsylvania in 1734, in colony days before the Revolutionary War. He was famous as a hunter while he was still a boy, and the hours he spent in the forest, they were his greatest joy. Did you hear that? That was Daniel Boone with his long rifle out hunting a bear. Listen. He got him. Daniel Boone shot that bear. That was when Daniel was only 15 years old. Yes, Daniel Boone was the greatest hunter and explorer this country ever had. Now, sometimes Dan hunted bears. And sometimes wildcats. And other times the timber wolf. Daniel Boone loved to explore, too, and he was one of the first pioneers to see the Blue Ridge Mountains and the Bluegrass region of Kentucky. Oh, Daniel knew the forest, he knew the forest well, the mountains and the rivers and where the animals dwell. He was handy with a rifle and with a hunting knife, and he loved the open spaces, the cleanest kind of life. Of course, there were other dangers in the forest in those days besides wild animals. There were Indians, and one day when Daniel was exploring a cut in the mountains where Kentucky, Virginia, and Tennessee meet, an area known as Cumberland Gap, he knew there were Indians ahead, unfriendly Indians. Quickly, Daniel turned around and silently he cut back on his own trail, but the Indians were behind him, too. Dan was surrounded. Dan fought like a wildcat. But the odds were just too great. He was captured and taken to the Indians' camp. The Indians knew Daniel's reputation, and they tied him to a tree post to prevent his escape. That night, when the Indians were asleep, Dan found a sharp piece of bark right back of where his hands were tied. Slowly and painfully, he rubbed the leather cord against the bark until at last he was free. Then, as quiet as a cat, he escaped. The Indians followed, but Daniel covered ground so fast that he left their swiftest runners behind. He covered 160 miles on foot in 4 days, and he met his friends, settlers from back east at Cumberland Gap. During the Revolutionary War, Dan was a major in the American Army, and his great knowledge of forestry and wood lore came in handy when he fought the British and the Indians on the British side. But he was friendly to many Indians because Daniel was a fair man to red men and to white, and he never used his rifle unless he had to fight. He didn't like big cities, he kept on moving west, and he helped to build our country and tame the wilderness. When the Revolutionary War was over, Dan kept heading west until he made his final home in Missouri. There he would sit under a tree during the day, and settlers and Indians came to him with their problems, for he was a man of great justice and simple democracy. His tree became famous as Boone's Judgment Tree. Often Dan sat under it and remembered his old battles and adventures, and he would fondly dream of his hunting days when he hunted the big bear and the savage wildcat and the wild timber wolf. And now you've heard my story, there is no more to tell. The story of Daniel Boone, who served his country well. His clothes were made of buckskin and he wore a coonskin hat. A democratic pioneer, I hope you'll remember that.
Many, many years ago, when the people of Israel were a great nation ruled by King Saul, they fought a long and bitter war against their ancient enemies, the Philistines. In those days, soldiers used swords and spears and bows and arrows, and they wore heavy armor and carried shields to protect themselves in battle, so that only the biggest and strongest men were taken into the army. Well, in this war, the Israelites and the Philistines were pretty evenly matched. They fought many hard battles, and each side lost many men, but neither side could completely conquer the other. Then one day, while the Philistines were camped on one side of the great valley and the Israelites on the other, there came out of the camp of the Philistines a champion of their cause, a huge giant, taller and stronger and bigger than any man anyone had ever seen. He wore very heavy armor, and his face was fierce and cruel, so fierce and cruel that it would strike fear into the hearts of the bravest. This was Goliath, the giant of Gath. He strode to the center of the valley, faced the armies of Israel, and in a voice like thunder, he hurled this defiance at them. I am Goliath, the giant of Gath, and the Philistines have chosen me as their champion. You, soldiers of Israel, choose a man for you, and let him come down here and fight with me. If he kills me, we will be the servants of Israel. If I kill him, you will be slaves to the Philistines. I defy any man to accept my challenge. When the men of Israel saw Goliath and heard his defiant challenge, they were afraid, for they had no one to match his size and strength. Not one among them dared go down and do battle with the giants. Not, that is, until the shepherd boy David heard Goliath's challenge. Now, David was just a boy. He knew nothing about swords and spears and fighting wars. But he was a thoughtful boy, too, and a good boy, because he believed in God and trusted in him. So, when he heard Goliath defying King Saul's army, he turned to his brothers and said, "In defying the army of Israel, Goliath defies God. Is there no one here to go out and do battle against the enemy of the Lord?" David's brothers were first surprised and then angry at him. "Go back to your flocks and leave wars to fighting men." But David wouldn't be put off. "I will do it," he said. "Send word to King Saul. Tell him that I will go down into the valley and do battle with Goliath the giant." When the king saw how determined David was, he gave him his blessing and offered him his own royal armor and sword. But David wouldn't take them. He wasn't a soldier. Instead, he went to a nearby stream and selected 5 smooth stones. He put these in his shepherd's bag. He took his stick in his left hand, and in his right hand he held a slingshot. That's all. With both armies looking on, excited and expectant, David went down into the valley to meet Goliath. They met in the middle of the valley. David looking up at the giant, confident and unafraid, and Goliath looking down on the unarmed boy with eyes full of hatred. Suddenly, the giant Philistine roared in a terrible fury. "I have defied all the armies of Israel to give me a man to fight, and they have sent a boy against me. What? Am I a dog that you come against me with a stick?" David answered him calmly. "I come against you in the name of the Lord of hosts, the God of the armies of Israel, whom you have defied. Your sword and your spear and your shield will not save you, Goliath, for this day you shall learn that the Lord fights on the side of right." Goliath let out an angry snarl. "So be it. Defend yourself, boy." Goliath the giant rushed forward to make quick work of the boy champion of the Israelites. David stood his ground. He reached into his shepherd's bag, took out 1 stone. He fixed it in his slingshot, and he let it fly. the giant was dead, and the simple shepherd boy, who trusted in God, had done what all of King Saul's army hadn't been able to do. David lifted his eyes to heaven, and he whispered a prayer.